You are welcome to yet another episode of HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show, where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. In the ongoing legal chaos surrounding R. Kelly, the Chicago trial stands out for a particularly alarming judicial maneuver. One that in the eyes of many fair-minded observers compromised the integrity of the entire proceeding. And no, this isn't speculation. This isn't an exaggeration. This is based on the court's own documented actions and the very words of those inside the courtroom. Today we're going to carefully unpack what happened during that trial, how unrelated criminal counts were deliberately merged together causing confusion and injustice, and how even when jurors tried to do the right thing to separate fact from fiction and guilt from innocence, they were met with judicial advice that defied both logic and legal fairness. We're going to examine how in a moment when a mistrial should have been declared, when the system had a chance to correct itself, it instead doubled down on a flawed strategy. One that weaponized procedure against the defendant Robert Sylvester Kelly. So let's take it from the top. In criminal proceedings, charges are typically brought in a way that separates distinct offenses. Each count should stand or fall on its own merit. A defendant might be charged with multiple crimes, but it is the jury's duty to weigh each charge independently and free from undue influence or strategic entanglement by others. But in the Chicago trial, to address the second federal case against R. Kelly, something else entirely was allowed to happen. The prosecution brought forth a slew of counts ranging from child pornography to obstruction of justice, and then further layered in enticement and coercion charges against alleged victims. This in itself might not seem out of the ordinary to a casual observer, but the problem lay in how these particular charges were drafted and combined. Instead of presenting enticement and coercion as separate counts, which they should be, by definition distinct legal concepts, the prosecution lumped them together into a single count. In the courtroom, the count read as enticement and coercion. To the untrained ear that might sound like a mere phrasing decision, but to any competent attorney or legal scholar this is a tactic. A deliberate and dangerous one. Why is this a problem? Well, because in the eyes of the law, enticement and coercion are fundamentally different actions. Enticement involves luring or persuading someone into doing something, while coercion implies force, intimidation or threats. You can have one without the other? And a jury should be given the right to decide on them independently. Yet here they were forced to treat them as one indivisible package. And predictably this created a massive problem during deliberations. According to post-trial accounts from one of the jurors, the jury room became divided when it came to those merged counts. The jurors, reviewing the evidence as they were instructed, came to a clear consensus: there was no coercion. No evidence that Robert Kelly had threatened, intimidated or forced anyone into anything. That element of the charge simply didn't hold up under scrutiny. However, when it came to the enticement portion, some members of the jury believed that the government had potentially demonstrated that Kelly had enticed certain individuals. Now, whether that conclusion was sound is its own separate discussion, but the critical issue here is that the jury was being asked to deliver a verdict on a single combined charge when they'd reached opposite conclusions on its two essential components. Faced with this legal contradiction, the jury did what any responsible jury should do: they asked the judge for guidance. One of the jurors raised their hand requesting legal advice on how to proceed. They plainly stated that the jury found Robert Kelly not guilty of coercion, but were divided on enticement. Since the charges were presented as enticement and coercion, they needed to know if it was legally permissible to convict on one but not the other, or whether a not guilty verdict on coercion required a not guilty verdict on the entire count. Now in this moment, this crucial pivotal moment, Federal Judge Harry Leinenweber had a clear legal and ethical obligation. He should have declared a mistrial on those counts. The instructions were flawed and the charges were improperly merged. The jury's request for clarification also revealed an irreconcilable issue in the way the charges were constructed and presented. When a jury can't properly separate elements of a charge because of the way it's been drafted, the only lawful recourse is to remedy the situation, even if that means a mistrial. But instead of doing that, Instead of upholding the constitutional principle that a defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt on every element of every charge, Judge Leinenweber did the unthinkable. He instructed the jury to find Robert Kelly guilty of both enticement and coercion. That's right, he did this. Despite the fact that the jury by their own admission had found no coercion, the judge effectively overruled their factual determination. He advised them to treat the counts as inseparable and to convict on both elements together. In other words, the jury was instructed to ignore their own finding of innocence on coercion, because in the court's view the combined charge could still stand if there was belief in one part of it. Let's pause and reflect on how serious that is. In American criminal law, each element of a charge must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. If even one element is not established, the entire charge must fail. That's not a technicality. That's a bedrock principle of justice. It ensures that people are not convicted of crimes based on incomplete or contradictory evidence. By advising the jury to convict on a charge where they'd already found a crucial element unmet, Judge Leinenweber subverted that principle. He placed his thumb on the scale, tipping it against the defendant in a way that should trouble anyone who believes in due process. And the consequences of this decision weren't confined to the trial room. This instruction and judicial overreach had a direct and devastating impact on Robert Kelly's sentencing. It formed the basis for years added to his punishment, years stemming from a charge the jury did not unanimously support. Moreover, it set a dangerous precedent. If a judge can merge distinct charges, then direct a jury to convict on both even when the evidence only supports one, what protection does any defendant have? It opens the door to convictions based not on proof but on procedural manipulation. It's important to recognize that this wasn't an innocent mistake. Merging unrelated counts is a known tactic in certain prosecutorial strategies. It allows the government to bolster weaker charges by tethering them to stronger ones, in the process muddying the waters for a jury and increasing the likelihood of a conviction. But the courts are supposed to be the backstop against this kind of abuse. Judges are there to ensure that the charges are properly structured, that the jury's role is protected, and that the law is fairly applied, which the Chicago court boss clearly didn't do. There is no doubt that in this case the system failed. And it failed in a public and undeniable way. The fact that a juror felt compelled to openly ask for clarification, and then to later disclose the internal deliberations tells you everything you need to know about how flawed this trial process was. When jurors are confused about how to apply the law, when they receive guidance that contradicts their own factual findings, the integrity of the verdict is irrevocably compromised. What should have happened is straightforward. The court should have either separated the counts into distinct charges, or upon realizing the problem during deliberation declared a mistrial on those counts. That is the only outcome consistent with the law and with fairness. Instead, the court chose expediency over justice even after attorney Jennifer Bonjean had offered guidance. This moment, perhaps more than any other in R. Kelly's Chicago trial, reveals the extent to which procedural maneuvering was used to secure convictions where the evidence did not support them. This trial should be a cautionary tale for anyone who values the rule of law. It's a reminder that due process is not just a legal formality but a moral imperative. One that protects the innocent and ensures the guilty are convicted only when every element of every charge has been properly and independently proven. So the next time someone dismisses concerns about this case as mere celebrity sympathy or fan delusion, point them to this section of the trial transcript. Show them the jury notes. Show them the judge's instruction and show them how justice was not done, and how a flawed process led to a flawed verdict. Because the truth is in the record and it deserves to be heard. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.